Thank you very much, Minister. Now, we've got one last question. Do you have time to do one more before we do closers? Is that okay?
Yeah. I'd rather do questions than closing. I mean, we want to answer what you want to hear about as opposed to tell you what we want to tell you.
Okay, I appreciate the point. Let's not change the format on everybody. One last question. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Janet. I'm Peter McCarthy with BMO Insurance, and I have a question for the panel about health care. With the sustainability of our healthcare system at risk, it's more important for healthcare dollars to be directed towards prevention and prevention of disease and health promotion to improve healthcare for all Ontarians and to lower costs for the system. So firstly, do you agree with that statement? And secondly, if you do, would you consider tax or other incentives for corporations or individuals to help do preventative healthcare work for Ontarians?
Did you say a tax?
Tax incentives.
Okay, thank you very much. The order on this question will be Minister Pupatello, Mr. Rossi, and Mr. Prue.
Thanks. Thank you. And we were the first government to instill a Ministry of Health Promotion. It wasn't just for show. It really was that the activity then has its own budget that doesn't get eaten up by the balance of the health budgets. So you'd constantly be coming forward with measures like fighting obesity in children, disease controls through the Ministry of Health, significant funding towards diabetes programs, looking at the big areas where so much of the money goes in health care. But on the preventative front, I think it's fair to say that we've had a great increase. The vaccinations for infants, the no junk food in schools. Every time I come up with one of these examples of what we've done on the preventative side, these items were all voted against by the opposition parties. So it's easy to stand here today in the cusp of an election and it's coming and we're all full of these great platitudes. Oh, absolutely, we love it. But where the rubber hits the road, when you're voting in the House and you look at what you're voting for, our budgets have been voted against by opposition parties that have all included initiatives on prevention. And quite frankly, we haven't seen this level of prevention out of the Ontario government since the tectonic plates separated. And so I expect that we're going to see the dividends of that in the next 10 and 15 years, where kids aren't going to have the obesity issues that they have today. Young people aren't going to be acquiring diabetes like they are today. We're going to see the effect of fitness tax credits, helping kids with sports equipment, all those things that we've been doing. It's a long-term investment, but we will see it pay dividends in the next 10 and 15 years.
Thank you, Minister. Mr. Rossi.
Well, I didn't realize we were going to be talking about geologic time, but as a former CEO of the Heart and Stroke Foundation of Ontario, I'm a huge believer in prevention, and there's no doubt, and I salute some of the initiatives that have come out of the Ministry of Health Promotion. There have been lots of times where it has been more show than go, and it is a fraction of the health budget. And what we really need, as opposed to have a little ghettoized effort, is to incorporate it within the much larger healthcare budget. And one of the ways is to ensure that we are using those dollars most effectively. We would eliminate the LHINs, the local health integration networks, that have essentially wasted $300 million that should be going into frontline care, should be going into prevention. There are other ways to use the dollars more effectively. We've called for not only the refurbishment of 35,000 long-term beds, but an additional 5,000 on top of that. There are lots of people in our hospitals using resources that are far better adapted in long-term and far more efficiently and effectively used there. We've also called for the doubling of the home care tax credit. There is no better place to allow people to live out their final days than within the home if it's possible. And so we want to make that easier for families to do, reduce the burden on the healthcare system, and have better outcomes.
Thank you very much, Mr. Rossi. Mr. Prue.
Thank you very much for the question. It seems fitting. I'm sitting right here today. I used to be the vice chair of the Board of Health of Toronto, and Sheila Basra used to sit beside me. And we talked often about public health and how monies could be saved, and how the best thing you could possibly do is make sure that people didn't get sick in the first place. It's all well and good to spend the money on hospitals, and I grant we need to spend it. But we need to increasingly look at ways where the money isn't funneled to the acute care at the end, but in making sure people don't get there. And there's 3 or 4 ways that we can do that. The first is to increase the long-term care budget. That's already been spoken about, and we are in total agreement that we need long-term care facilities because we can't have what are called in the newspaper bed blockers, people who are in the hospital for no reason at all at $600 a day versus $150 in nursing homes or $50 if they stay at home. We need to look at care at home because that's the cheapest option and the one that most people want. We need to look at community health teams because they have proven that they work over and over again, and we have a plan for some 60 such health teams in our plans for the upcoming election. We need to save some money. And one of the ways, and this is one of the few things I can agree with my Conservative colleagues, is we have to look at the LHINs because that's an awfully expensive proposition that isn't delivering what it's supposed to deliver. In terms of my colleague to the right, we vote against budget. Sure we do. But I think it's an unfair thing to say you vote against everything we ever do. There are good things in budgets and bad things, and you get one vote.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Mr. Prue. That brings the question portion of our session to a close this morning. And thank you all to the questioners. I'd like to now call on our, we will continue to do the round robin with Mr. Prue, Minister Pupatello, and Mr. Rossi. We will call on them for 2-minute closing statements. So we will begin with Mr. Prue.
Well, thank you very much, and I will be very brief. I thank you for coming out here today to listen to what we have to say. You can see that there is some divergence of opinion, but you can also see that on many, many things, although we like to get our own points in, are in some degree of conformity. And part of what we are in conformity with is the need for the financial sector to be strong in Ontario and particularly in Toronto, the need for a national securities regulator here in Toronto, and to tap into the tremendous talent and expertise that is in this room. As New Democrats, we want what you want, but we also want to make sure that when we all get richer as a result, and I'm sure that that's a goal of several people, at least in this room, that there is benefits to all. And it's part of what makes me a New Democrat, because we want to leave no one behind. We want to make sure that when industry or commerce grows, that there are jobs. We don't want to be giving money to corporations that use the money to pad their own wallets and then lay people off. And we've seen that all too often. You give money to a corporation, and then the corporation packs up and leaves. We saw that in Hamilton. We saw that in steel. And that was not something that I want to, as a parliamentarian, give my money to. I want to make sure that when we give money to corporations that ask for that money, that there is a net benefit to the community in the end. And that net benefit has to be jobs and stability for so many communities across this province. And although in Toronto we seem to be doing well, I invite anyone to go down to St. Thomas or St. Mary's, to go down to southwestern Ontario, south of Windsor. I have a cottage in Amherstburg. Look at the for sale signs and the people who no longer have jobs. And that's what has to happen as a result of better financial instruments.
Thank you very much, Mr. Prue and Minister Pupatello.
Thank you. I think it's important that people from the financial service industry understand the full breadth of everything government deals with. Financial service, though, is an underpinning of the economy, and we believe that, and that's one of the reasons we made it a focus of the work that we've done in economic development and trade. You've had the finance minister at your table working with all of the partners in the industry to move the sector forward, and it's grown. It's grown through the recession. You can't say that in any other market but ours. And it's become a beacon around the world. Best banking system in the world. Essentially, that's Toronto's banking system where the bulk of it is. We've been huge proponents of this. We've worked hand in hand with your officials to take this message to the world, and it's working. Despite a recession, the likes of which no one in this room has witnessed before, we've come through that. We couldn't have done it if we didn't go into the recession with a balanced budget. Yes, we've incurred debt. We've incurred debt at the same ratio as the federal government. So as we go into this campaign and people want to talk about our debt numbers, it is just what the feds have done as well, acknowledging that in tough times we did have to step forward. We saved an industry, something that the opposition parties also voted against. These are important factors because where you live, you're the banker, or you're the insurance guy, or you're the woman who gets all of those services for your clientele. But regular folk need jobs. So the economy will become a big part of this discussion going into this election. And I'm telling you, you need an aggressive, forward-thinking leader that's going to take Ontario forward and not back to the 70s, as we suspect will happen with the opposition. I'm delighted to be here. I'm delighted to promote financial service every step of the way, and more importantly, develop the partnership and continue that into the next term. Thanks for having me here today.
Thank you very much, Minister. Mr. Rossi.
Well, again, I want to thank you for the opportunity to speak and to have this forum. I particularly want to thank each and every one of you for what you do every day, which is out there without massive government subsidies, creating jobs the way jobs should be created by a market economy. And to know that with a Tim Hudak government, you're going to have a strong partner who's going to continue to work with you to remove the barriers to growth, to work on coordination, to work on advocacy, to ensure that we do all we can to that we build on this incredible strength, not just in financial services, but all kinds of other industries that, again, we don't have to create from scratch, where we have world-leading capability, whether it's in biotech, whether it's in our medical sciences area, whether it's in design, whether it's in IT, whether it's in games, whether it's in architecture, etc. These are the kinds of areas where you're then going to avoid the problems that Mr. Prue pointed to, which is massive handouts that then don't lead to long-term permanent jobs, don't lead to growth in the economy. A Tim Hudak government is a government with a plan, a government that believes in the potential of Ontario, that believes in the potential of our market and the leaders within it, and that will work to get the books back in order, that will work to reduce this massive deficit that has occurred, and that is going to basically unleash the potential that is here, because we believe in you, and I don't think the other parties believe in that as much. They believe more in government, and that's the fundamental difference, and that's what we're asking you to support on October 6th. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Rossi. And ladies and gentlemen, that brings our event to a close this morning. To our candidates, panelists, my apologies for any errors in timing or cutting you off rudely, but I don't think anyone lacked for any good digs, and I controlled my own tendency to participate. So I thank you all. I wish you all the best on the campaign trail. Thank you to everyone who helped and worked on this. We will hopefully have this for websites, so those that are not able to be here can enjoy it. Thank you very much. Have a good day.